Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video, let's discuss about the different types of vaccines. In part 1 of this video, we have discussed about what the vaccines are and what are the properties of vaccines, right? So now we are going to discuss about the different types of vaccines, and they include whole organism vaccines, where we are going to either attenuate the organism or we are going to inactivate the organism, as well as purified macromolecule vaccines. In this we are going to discuss especially about the polysaccharide vaccines, toxoid vaccines and recombinant antigen vaccines. Moreover, the other type of vaccines are the recombinant vector vaccines, nucleic acid vaccines, where here we are going to discuss about the DNA vaccines and RNA vaccines, and moreover synthetic peptide vaccines. In this synthetic peptide vaccines, here we need to know the amino acid sequence of a protein. For example, this is a protein, right? In this protein we'll have a different combination of amino acids, right? And we need to know the amino acid sequence of that particular protein. With that knowledge, we can go with the preparation of synthetic peptide vaccines. But actually these vaccines are less immunogenic. To avoid that problem, these proteins are to be conjugated with a carrier proteins to increase the immunogenicity. So this is about the synthetic peptide vaccines, and the examples for the synthetic peptide vaccines include hepatitis B virus and malarial parasite, diphtheria toxin, influenza and HIV. And coming to the other type of vaccines, let's discuss each in detail. First we will go with this whole organism vaccines, where I am going to talk about the attenuated viral bacterial vaccines and the inactivated or killed viral or bacterial vaccines. Coming to the attenuated vaccines, some of the examples for this attenuated vaccines are BCG vaccine, and BCG stands for Bacillus calmette-guerin. So this vaccine is given against tuberculosis. And moreover, sabine polio vaccine. So this is an attenuated vaccine. There is a killed vaccine also for polio, that is Salk vaccine, and this is the sabine vaccine, which comes under the category of an attenuated vaccine, right? And moreover, Mycobacterium bovis and also measles vaccine. These are some of the examples of attenuated vaccines. What do you mean by the attenuation? Attenuation means decrease in virulence. Here you need to know the difference between virulent and avirulent, right? So virulent means toxic. If a strain is virulent, means it is toxic to the cell. That means it is going to cause infection in a human being. If a strain is avirulent, means if we decrease the virulence, it is no longer capable of causing infection. We can call it as non-toxic. So hope you are clear with virulent and avirulent. So virulent means it is toxic. Avirulent means it is non-toxic. So here we are making this strain avirulent with the help of attenuations. It is a process where we are going to decrease the virulence, right? If we want to prepare a vaccine, what do? Vaccine is nothing but a preparation of a microorganism or its product, right? So if we want to use a microorganism, if we directly use it, it will cause the infection leading to a disease, right? But here our aim is to protect that person from the infection, right? We need to induce the immune response, and we want to create a memory so that we are going to protect a lifelong immunity for that person with the help of vaccines. So for attenuated vaccines, we are going to use a microbe, that could be a bacteria or a virus, where we are going to decrease the virulence. That is nothing but we call it as attenuation. So though we decrease the virulence, when we insert that organism into a person, it will be recognized as a foreign particle and the antibodies will be produced against it, right? But here we are making a microbe avirulent so that it will lose its capacity to cause infection in a person, right? Now how can we attenuate that strain? Whether it could be a bacteria or a virus, how can we attenuate it? That means how can we decrease the virulence of that particular strain? Like one thing is like, if we grow that particular pathogenic strain for a longer period under adverse conditions, generally in a lab we say that repeated subculturing is not good, right? But here in process of attenuation, what we do, we are going to grow that pathogenic strain for a longer periods, maintaining an adverse conditions. That leads to an attenuation. So we are going to reduce the virulence of that strain. Or we can go by the another method like prolonged passage through different hosts. Prolonged passage through different hosts. That means we are going to use different hosts like cat, dog, guinea pig, or we can use mouse or rat, whatever. We are going to use different hosts. We can decrease the virulence of this strain. In this way, we can attenuate either a bacterial or a viral strain. Once we reduce the virulence, but remember that the organism will still capable of replicating in the host. Right, it's a live organism. Though it is in live form, we are going to reduce its virulence. It is not capable of causing the infection, but still it is capable of growing in the host. If it enters into body, what happens? It will be recognized as a foreign particle, right? So once the foreign particle is recognized, what happens? Our immune cells will act and then it will process the antigen, thereby eliminating it from the body. This is how we go with the attenuated vaccine. So the main concept here is we are going to decrease the virulence. If the virulence is decreased, what happens? The organism is not capable of causing any infection. So these attenuated vaccines will provide long-term immunity, where they can induce both humoral mediated immunity and the cell mediated immunity. Generally only single booster dose is sufficient with this attenuated vaccines. I told you what is booster dose, what is prime dose, what is humoral mediated immunity and what is cell mediated immunity. Please check part 1 of this video for better understanding. Coming to the other type of vaccines, that is inactivated vaccines, or we can also call them as killed vaccines. Here the organism will be killed by applying heat or by use of chemicals, or we can use irradiation with gamma rays. Here we are going to kill the organism, but we have to be very careful with this killed vaccines. Why? Because we need to maintain the structure of epitope on the surface of an antigen, right? If that structure is not maintained, like what happens when we introduce this pathogen into our body, that should be recognized by our immune cells, right? Specific antibodies will be produced and these specific antibodies will go and react with the specific antigen, right? So for that reason, we need to maintain the structure of epitope that is on the surface of the antigen. So here we are going to kill that microbe, whether the bacteria or a virus, by any of the methods. Like we can go with the application of heat, or we can use certain chemicals, or we can also go with the irradiation, that is with the use of gamma rays. And here in this type of vaccines, that is in case of this inactivated or killed vaccines, repeated doses are necessary. That is to maintain the immunological status. And some of the examples of these vaccines include Salk polio vaccine. You can easily remember that K stands for a killed vaccine, whereas Sabin is also a polio vaccine which comes under the category of a live vaccine, which is an attenuated live vaccine. But here Salk polio vaccine is a killed vaccine, right? And the other vaccines are pertussis vaccine, typhoid vaccine, hepatitis A vaccine, rabies vaccine, influenza vaccine, cholera vaccine and plague vaccine. See, all these vaccines were based on the concept of either inactivating the organism or by killing the organism, right? Though we kill the organism, when it is introduced into the host, it will be recognized as a foreign particle. This is about the killed vaccines. Hope you are clear with the attenuated vaccines and the killed vaccines. In attenuated vaccines, the organism will be in a live form. But coming to the killed vaccines or the inactivated vaccines, here the microbes will be inactivated. That means their virulence will be completely lost, or the organism is completely killed, but when it is introduced, it will be recognized as a foreign particle. Coming to the other type of vaccines, that is under the category of purified macromolecule, we are going to discuss about the polysaccharide vaccines. Like if you look into the ultrastructure of a bacteria, some bacteria will have a capsule. Mainly the virulence of that pathogenic strains is primarily dependent on the presence of capsule. And especially due to the presence of capsule, those bacteria will exhibit antiphagocytic property. In this polysaccharide vaccines, what we can do is that polysaccharide capsule is coated with antibodies. The bacteria which is having a capsule are more virulent compared to the bacteria which are non-capsulated, and moreover the presence of capsule will give the antiphagocytic property to that bacteria. So here what we are going to do is we are going to use that polysaccharide capsule that is coated with the antibodies. So what happens? This capsule coated antibodies will greatly increase the ability of macrophages and neutrophils to phagocytose the pathogen. So initially what happened? Due to the presence of the capsule, those bacteria will attain a property of antiphagocytic feature. But here if we coat the capsule with the antibodies, they will increase the ability of phagocytosis by macrophages and neutrophils. These are again immune cells in our body. So here the macrophages and the neutrophils will phagocytose that pathogen. Based on this concept, we can go with the preparation of the polysaccharide vaccines. And some of the examples of polysaccharide vaccines include the vaccines against Streptococcus pneumonia, which is a capsulated bacteria, and moreover we can go with the preparation of polysaccharide vaccines against Neisseria meningitis and also against Haemophilus influenza. These are the currently available polysaccharide vaccines. Coming to the other type of vaccines, that are toxoid vaccines. We all know that the bacteria will produce certain toxins, right? If you take an example of Clostridium botulinum, where it produces a botulin toxin, right? See, bacteria will produce exotoxins as well as endotoxins. So here our target is to prepare toxoid vaccines. So let's see how these vaccines are prepared. Bacteria produce exotoxins, right? So when these exotoxins are released into the body, what they are going to do? They will damage the host tissue, thereby leading to the symptoms and finally results in a disease. So here what we are going to do is we are going to isolate this exotoxin, followed by the purification of exotoxin. See, first step is we are going to grow the bacteria where it produces an exotoxin, and we need to collect that exotoxin followed by the purification of exotoxin. Then what we are going to do? We are going to inactivate this exotoxin by treatment with chemicals. What chemicals can we use? Like we can use chemicals like formaldehyde. So what is the step here? Here we are going to inactivate the toxin, right? So during the process of inactivation, this exotoxin will be converted into a toxoid, right? So we are going to isolate the exotoxin followed by the purification, and once we purify, we are going to inactivate this exotoxin, forming a toxoid. If it doesn't inactivate and if we directly introduce this exotoxin, what happens again? It will damage the tissue, causing the infection. But here our intention is to go with the preparation of a vaccine. So in that process, we are going to convert this exotoxin into a toxoid. We are done with the preparation of toxoids. So when we vaccinate a person with this toxoid, right, in the form of a vaccine, what we are doing here? We are going to introduce this toxoid into a person. That induces the formation of anti-toxoid antibody. So here our intention is to induce the immune response, finally resulting in the synthesis of antibodies to neutralize the antigen, right? So here in process of preparing this toxoid vaccines, what we are going to do? We have to first convert it to toxoid by purification and by a chemical treatment. and this toxoid is then injected into a person in the form of a vaccine that will induce the immune response, leading to the synthesis of anti-toxoid antibodies. Now, what these anti-toxoid antibodies will do? These anti-toxoid antibodies will go and bind with the toxin. Finally, what happens? Then these antibodies are going to neutralize the effect of antigen. This is how we prepare a toxoid vaccines. Even nowadays, with the help of rDNA technology, we can find a gene. For suppose if this is the organism's gene, right, and it have A, B, C, D, 4 set of genes. Out of these 4 genes, we are going to find out which gene codes for the exotoxin. For suppose this is the gene C which codes for the exotoxin. What we are going to do? We have to specifically isolate the gene C. We are not interested in other genes. We are especially interested in isolating a gene that codes for the exotoxin, right? We want to prepare a vaccine against that particular pathogenic bacteria which is capable of producing exotoxins, right? In that process, what we are going to do? We have to isolate a gene that codes for the exotoxin. In the next step, we are going to introduce this gene into a host organism and make it express. Now what happens when this gene is expressed in the host? We can get the sufficient quantities of exotoxin. Once we get the sufficient quantity of exotoxin, what we are going to do in the next step? We have to purify it and then we have to inactivate it, converting it to a toxoid. And this toxoid in the form of vaccine, if you inject to a person, that will induce the immune response, leading to the production of antibodies which will neutralize the effect of exotoxin that is released by a pathogenic bacteria. This is the concept of toxoid vaccines. And coming to the examples of toxoid vaccines are available against Corynebacterium diphtheria and Clostridium tetani, which we call it as a tetanus vaccine. And of course, the vaccine is available against Clostridium perfringens and also against Vibrio cholera and pertussis vaccine. These are some of the examples of toxoid vaccines. Now let's discuss about the recombinant antigen vaccines. Coming to the recombinant antigen vaccines, we all know what is meant by recombination. So mostly in genetic engineering technology, we go with the generation of a recombinant molecules where we are going to combine 2 different genes, right? See here, already the recombinant antigen vaccines were available against hepatitis B, human papilloma virus and also against meningococcal bacterial vaccine. So these are the 3 different vaccines which are the best examples for the recombinant antigen vaccines. So the first recombinant vaccine was developed against hepatitis B virus. So we call with the name of Recombivax. Here what exactly we do is, as I told you just now, that we are going to combine 2 different genes, right? So if you take a structure of a virus or a bacteria, they will have a surface proteins, right? So those surface antigens will be utilized in the preparation of these vaccines. For example, this is the genetic material of a virus which have a set of genes, for example A, B, C, D and E. It will have more number of surface antigens. For example, we target a specific viral antigen, okay, that is the surface antigen. For suppose we are interested in cloning this gene D which codes for the surface antigen. So here what we do is, we are going to isolate this gene which codes for the surface antigen and then we are going to introduce it into a vector and then into a host to make a multiple copies of this gene. If we have more number of genes, what does it indicate? When that gene express, it is going to express the surface antigen, right, which we are going to utilize for the preparation of recombinant antigen vaccines. For suppose if we take an example of hepatitis B vaccine, which was the first vaccine that is developed by the rDNA technology. Here what they have done is, in this hepatitis B virus, if you identify the structure of this virus, it will have a surface protein that acts as an antigen, that is hepatitis B surface antigen. Okay, if you look into the genome of this virus, that is hepatitis B virus, will have more number of genes that will code for the surface antigen, right? And we are interested in this gene which codes for the hepatitis B virus surface antigen. For suppose A, B, C, D, E, F, these are the set of the genes that codes for the surface antigen. And we are interested in the gene that expresses the hepatitis B surface antigen. For example, this is that gene. Gene E codes for the surface antigen of a hepatitis B virus. Now, how will you isolate this gene? You are going to treat it with the restriction enzymes. So, what these restriction enzymes will do? They will specifically cut the DNA at that particular location. So, once you cut the gene, what you are going to do? You have to introduce this gene into a vector. So, here your intention is to clone the gene. That means you are going to get a multiple copies of this gene, and when that is introduced again into a host, and when that undergo the replication, you are going to get a multiple copies of the gene that express the hepatitis B surface antigen, and you are going to purify it, and then you are going to use it as a vaccine. Especially for the preparation of this hepatitis B vaccine, after the isolation of the gene that codes for the hepatitis B surface antigen, it should be introduced, especially the gene that is coding for the hepatitis B surface antigen is introduced into an yeast cell, and these yeast cells are then introduced into a fermenter where you are going to provide all the nutritional sources that support the growth of an yeast. Once the yeast cells are grown, what you are going to do? You have to harvest those cells, because this surface antigen is produced intracellularly. That means within the yeast cell, not extracellularly. This surface antigen is expressed intracellularly, that is within the yeast cells. So for that reason, after you harvest the yeast cells, you are going to disrupt the cells by applying a high pressure. Once you disrupt, once you break the yeast cells, you are going to collect that surface antigen, and that will be utilized for the preparation of a vaccine. In this way, with the help of this recombinant DNA technology also, we can go with the preparation of vaccines.